Her father had promised her to the deadliest archer in the mountains, so I challenged him to a duel for her hand. He'd refused me a dozen times. "You've got no name, no land, and no business looking at my daughter." He twisted the gold ring on his finger and pointed at the man who hadn't missed a target in 12 years. "Best of 3, my choice of targets. Last shot wins her." The champion drew first, and his arrow split an apple at 50 paces straight down the middle. I steadied my hand, breathed, and drove mine through the same split. Her father's smile flattened. He doubled the distance to 100 paces and balanced a new apple on a fence post. The champion's arrow drove clean through the apple like the wood wasn't there. I matched him before the apple finished falling. Her father's jaw locked. He walked out into the field himself, twisted the gold ring off his finger, and set it on a wooden stake at the far end. "Through the ring," he said, and the crowd went silent. The champion drew, exhaled, and let his arrow fly. The arrow clipped the gold and sent the ring spinning off the stake. He grinned at her father like it was already over. The girl pressed both hands over her mouth. I walked over, picked the ring out of the dirt, and set it back on the stake. My arrow flew through the ring without touching the gold, and the ring sat perfectly still on the stake. The champion had hit the ring, but I'd threaded the gap. The crowd erupted with my name as her father's hand dropped to his side. I walked back across the field, lifted the ring off the stake, and slid it onto her finger. Her father stared at his bare hand. The kid on the mound laughed at me in front of the whole team and said, "You throw like a girl." I picked up my glove and walked off the field. The other boys were still laughing when I got to my mom's car. My older sister was in the passenger seat with her college jacket on. She took one look at my face and the glove in my hand and said, "You're not quitting. Get in. We're going to the backyard." My sister pitched for her college team and had a fastball scouts drove 3 hours to watch. She handed me a ball in the backyard and told me to throw it at the fence. I threw it and it bounced twice before it got there. She didn't laugh. She walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. "Your elbow's dropping," she said. "Watch me." She wound up and the ball cracked against the fence so loud our neighbor opened his window and yelled at us to keep it down. She turned to me and grinned. "That's what we're going for." She fixed my grip and showed me how her fingers came off the seams last. The next one still took 2 bounces to get there, and I almost threw the glove down, but she just handed me another ball. The one after that hit the fence on 1 bounce. The next night, I hit it on the fly. The night after that, I broke a slat. By the end of the second week, our neighbor stopped opening his window because he knew it was just us. The next game, the kid who laughed at me stepped up to the plate. I was pitching. He smirked at me like he always did. I held the ball the way my sister showed me, my fingers high on the seams. I threw the first pitch and the catcher's mitt cracked so loud the kid flinched. He swung late and the catcher already had it. The second pitch he watched go by for strike 2. On the third pitch he swung so hard, the bat slipped out of his hands and skidded into the dugout. "Strike 3, the umpire said, and the kid just stared at me. I didn't pump my fist or yell. I looked up into the bleachers and found my sister sitting there in her college jacket, and I nodded at her. She nodded back. I throw like my sister, and my sister throws harder than anyone on that field. My best friend and I were homeless, so we sang together on the street to make money to survive. We lived under a blanket on the corner of a street because our clothes were filled with holes and we couldn't afford anything better. Every day we would wake up and go sing "I'll Be There" by Michael Jackson at the Times Square, which made us money. Whatever coins people gave us, we split 50-50. That was our routine for as long as I could remember, until one morning I woke up and his side was empty. His blanket and personal things were gone. My heart sank because when you're homeless and someone vanishes overnight, only the worst could have happened. I ran around asking every homeless person on the block, "Have you seen him? All of his stuff is gone." One guy shook his head. "I think he's dead, man. It'd be like that sometimes." My chest tightened. I asked another person. "The cops probably arrested him and confiscated his stuff. You should forget about him." I kept asking around, refusing to believe it. I asked a woman under the bridge. "I saw a guy who looked like him get on a bus. He probably left you." Each answer didn't make sense. "He's been my best friend and my brother for 5 years. He wouldn't leave without telling me." Days passed, and I went back to our corner alone. I tried to sing our song, but my voice wouldn't come out. I started losing hope. But what happened next was something I never could have imagined. The next day, I forced myself to sing through my tears because I was hungry and needed the money to buy food. "Just call my name, and I'll be there." Then I heard a familiar voice behind me, singing the next line, "And oh, I'll be there to comfort you." I turned around and saw my best friend wearing a suit and tie. I couldn't believe it. He even had a fresh haircut. Tears started running down my face. "What happened to you? I thought you were dead." A shelter worker heard me singing and connected me to a church. They gave me an apartment in exchange to sing for their church. I was shaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I had to finalize everything." He walked closer to me and handed me a key. "We split everything 50-50, remember?" It was the key to his apartment. That Sunday, we stood side by side in a church. Now the both of us in suits and fresh haircuts singing together. My best friend dared me to slide across his hardwood floor and socks. His dad was at work, and we were home alone. I took off in a full run across the floor, but my shoulder caught the edge of the shelf right as I was slowing down. The trophy from his dad's only NFL season tipped, hit the corner of the coffee table, and snapped clean below the figure's knees. The little gold football player spun across the floor and stopped at my feet. I put my hands on top of my head. I'm screwed. Carter grabbed both halves and tried to push them together. We're so cooked. Dad looks at that thing every night when he gets home since before I was even born. They didn't hold. He propped the top against the bottom so the crack faced the wall. From across the room, you could still see the gap. Then the garage door opened. His dad walked in with his jacket still on and went straight to the shelf. He always went to the shelf first. The second he saw the gap, he stopped. What happened to it? Carter started talking fast and I stepped in front of him. I knocked it over. I was sliding and my shoulder hit the shelf. His dad picked up both pieces and turned the figure in his hands. 20 years, he said, mostly to himself. That's been on that shelf for 20 years. He turned to me. That trophy is the only thing in this house that's just mine. He told me to call my mom. My mom came over and wrote him a check at the counter. He didn't read it. He stood at the shelf with both pieces in his hands until we left. He'd been going to that shelf first thing every day for 20 years. Now the shelf had nothing on it. That was the last time I saw Carter. Everyone in prison knew Kane was the plug. He didn't even try to hide it. The guards would shake him down for just walking past, and whenever they caught inmates with something, they'd instantly search him. But every time they did, they never caught him with anything. Guards would storm his cell, flip his mattress, rip out the vents, and he just laughed at them every time. One time someone said he was stashing it in another inmate's bunk, so they tore apart every cell. Still, they found nothing. They had literally no idea what to do. Every time they caught someone with something, they'd say, "I got it from Kane." Our warden was furious until he figured it out. Over the holiday weekend, his son's birthday magic kit came with a hollow soap bar, and it hit him. It immediately clicked. The first day back, he showed up to morning roll call early. The second Kane stepped into line, the warden said, "Hand over your soap bar." Kane's eyes went wide, and the warden stood there. He knew he had him. Now, Kane had no choice, and pulled it out. The warden was literally shaking with excitement, and the second he twisted it open, his face lit up. He was right. The soap had a hidden compartment inside. He knew he had him, but when he looked closer, he was confused. It was completely empty, and Kane was laughing his ass off. "What is this? Where is it?" And Kane thought it was so funny, he could barely get it out. "Sorry, boss. The morning delivery already went out. You're a few hours too late." The kids on my block triple dog dared me to ring the bell at the haunted house. Freddy's hand was still pointing at the house with the dead grass and the busted screen door when thunder cracked overhead like it was on cue. Everyone backed up to the curb and someone behind me said, "Yeah, he's cooked." I swallowed hard because the rule was simple. If you rang the bell, you had to come back with a candy bar from inside, or it didn't actually count. I started up the walkway alone. The porch light flickered out the second I stepped under it. I rang the bell and heard it echo somewhere deep in the house, then nothing. I was about to turn around when I heard footsteps coming slow toward the door. It creaked open. An old man in a cardigan stood there with a black patch over one eye, staring at me. I could hear my own breathing. He leaned in close and squinted at me with his good eye. "Are you Marty's grandson?" I clutched my chest and shrieked, "How? How do you know my grandpa?" He raised one hand and said, "Wait," and turned back inside. This was the perfect moment to run, but when I tried to move, my legs wouldn't go. My whole body was being held in place by something I couldn't see, and I just stood there shaking. He came back holding a Polaroid. In it was my grandpa as a young man, arm around a younger version of the old man, both of them grinning on this same porch. "Your grandpa was my best friend. He'd come by and tell me about his kids and grandkids." He pressed a king-size Snickers into my palm. I told him grandpa passed away last spring. His face crumpled and he sank against the doorframe. He reached into his cardigan and pulled out a brass keychain, worn smooth. He gave me this the year he turned 40, said I was his longest friend. He pressed it into my other hand. "He'd want you to have it." Then he reached into a bowl by the door, dropped a gummy eyeball into my palm, and gave me a small wink with his good eye. I tucked the keychain deep in my pocket and ran down the path screaming, holding the eyeball up high. "He took my eye! He took my eye!" Freddy hit the grass. The other kids scattered into the street. I dropped the eyeball into Freddy's hand with the candy bar on top. Just kidding. My son finally beat the old man at a one-on-one basketball game, and he'll never forget the lesson he learned. My son walked onto the court in fresh Jordans, spinning his Wilson ball on one finger. The old man was already there shooting alone, and my son tossed him the ball. Game to 7. The old man caught it and tossed it back with a grin. "You first, kid." My son drove straight at the rim and screamed, "Bam!" on the layup. The old man met him at the rim and swatted it down. He grabbed it and walked back to the top of the key. Your generation runs around screaming "Bam" just because Bam Adebayo dropped 83. Back in my day, we yelled Kobe. We weren't scared of nothing. We'd eat elbows and shoot through it. That's what Kobe means. It's having that killer mentality. He spun on my son, faded back and screamed, "Kobe, swish, crossover pull-up, drive and finish through the bump, step-back jumper. My son screamed bam on every shot he took and missed every one. By the time the old man scored his 6th straight basket, my son was 1 point from losing and hadn't scored once. The old man drove the lane one more time to put the game away. This time my son stood his ground. The old man's shoulder slammed into his chest, and the shot clanged off the rim. My son hit the ground hard and stayed down for a second. The old man stood over him. Get up. Kobe didn't get scared of contact. Get up. My son got up without saying a word. He picked up the loose ball, drove straight at the old man this time, took the bump, and finished through it. His first point. He did it again on the next possession. And again. Every time the old man got the ball, he pulled up short of the contact and missed. He couldn't take the hits he'd been giving. My son scored 6 straight, just like the old man had. They were tied at 6 with the next basket winning, and my son had the ball. He drove from the wing, took a forearm from the old man on purpose, hit the floor, got up, dribbled to the elbow, and faded back. The ball was halfway through the air when he yelled it for the first time. Kobe! Swish. The old man stood there for a long second, then nodded at my son once. Mamba mentality, kid. My son walked off that court taller than I'd ever seen him. He never screamed bam again. I humiliated a professional expert in their field at 7 years old. I was obsessed with cars at the time and used to spend all day fixing larger toy models with my own mini mechanic set. So when my mom said she was going for an oil change, I went with her because I really wanted to watch. But then the mechanic said it would cost $3,000. My mom asked why, and he told her on top of the oil change, her engine fluid was dirty, her brake pads were worn down, and her air filter was clogged. My mom's face dropped because that was everything she had, but she didn't know much about cars and just opened her wallet. That's when I stepped forward and asked the mechanic to open the hood so I could check the engine. He laughed, but when he saw I was serious, he nervously popped it open. I pulled out the engine fluid stick myself and saw it was clean and golden, not dirty and brown like he said. His smile dropped and he folded his arms, but I was already crouching by the front wheel and pointing at the brake pads. These are still thick, they're not worn down. Why did you say they were? I could see him turning red, and then I popped open the air filter box he'd said was clogged. I pulled out the filter, shook out the dust, and slid the filter back in. I turned to the mechanic and said, that wasn't clogged. Even if it was, it took me 60 seconds. You should know how to do this. By now, the other mechanics in the shop were watching, and the owner had walked out from the back office. My mom looked at me with pride, and I turned to the mechanic and asked him why he lied to my mom and tried to charge her $3,000 when she just came in for an oil change. He went pale. He either had to admit he knew less about cars than a 7-year-old, or admit he tried to scam a struggling single mother. He muttered, I just looked wrong, and walked away, but the owner stopped him and requested his uniform. My mom got in the car, but then the owner tapped me on the shoulder and asked if I wanted to do the oil change myself. I'll supervise, but you clearly know enough. That afternoon, I changed my mom's oil, and she didn't pay a cent. I was driving through town when I saw my 14-year-old son sitting on a street corner with a cardboard sign, asking strangers for money. I was confused because I gave him $50 every Friday and made his bed every morning. So why would my own son be acting homeless? A man dropped $10 into his cup, and he instantly stood up and walked into a building smiling. He came out a minute later in different clothes, and the cash he'd just got stuck from his pocket. I realized my son was acting homeless to scam money out of strangers, and my hands gripped the wheel as I decided to follow him and find out why. He got the bus to my ex-wife's house where he was staying for the week and walked to her door. But something about the way his legs trembled caught my eye. I heard him from where I hid behind the bushes, begging her to let him stay here because it was freezing tonight. Just one night. I'll leave tomorrow. His hands were together, and I noticed they were blue from the cold, but she crossed her arms. You're not welcome in my house. You can stay on the streets. My blood ran cold, and I heard her add, and if you show up to your dad's house early, I'll take him back to court and tell the judge he hit me. Then you'll never see him again. She slammed the door in his face as a tear rolled down his cheek. He walked back to the bus stop with his hands in his hoodie pockets to warm them up. My heart shattered as I realized my son wasn't faking being homeless. He was actually homeless 5 of the 7 days a week. I caught up to him, and when he turned around, I hugged him before he could say a word. You're staying at mine, son, all 7 days. I don't care what your mom says. He began sobbing, and I held him with all the love in the world.